Spanish police say they've identified the driver of the van that mowed down crowds walking along Barcelona's main tourist street last Thursday, killing 13 people. They haven't named him, but he's understood to be Yunus Abu Yaqub, a 22-year-old born in Morocco. Police say he may have fled the country. A South African court has given permission for an online auction of rhino horns, despite a global trade ban. The authorities had tried to stop the 3-day auction. There's a great demand for rhino horns in Vietnam and China, where they're used in traditional medicines. The South African government has confirmed that it granted diplomatic immunity to Zimbabwe's First Lady, Grace Mugabe, enabling her to return home despite being accused of assaulting a model in Johannesburg. The government said it was imperative to maintain good relations with Zimbabwe.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, recently announced additional assistance to support achieving the goals outlined in the Bilateral Development Objectives Assistance Agreement between the U.S. and Nigerian governments, signed in 2015. $25 million will strengthen good governance by supporting state governments' efforts to bolster Nigeria's open government partnership commitments to improve transparency and fight corruption. An additional $1.5 million will support a healthier, more educated population in targeted states through the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, also known as PEPFAR, for a total of $26.5 million in additional assistance.
The United States and South Korea announced late Saturday the two countries will end annual large-scale joint military exercises as part of diplomatic efforts to achieve complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. In a statement, the Pentagon said Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan and South Korea's Minister of National Defense, in a phone call Saturday, decided to end the Key Resolve and Full Eagle series of exercises. The decision comes 3 days after a summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Vietnam that ended without an agreement to resolve the North Korean nuclear crisis. Seoul's defense ministry released a similar statement, according to the Associated Press.
In an effort to encourage the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, to dismantle its nuclear weapons program, the United Nations Security Council last year passed Resolution 2375, which imposes sanctions on North Korea. The United States is determined to strictly implement this resolution. Members of the UN Security Council, and by extension all UN member states, have unanimously agreed to fully enforce sanctions on North Korea, and we expect them to continue to honor those commitments, said Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
China is stepping up its efforts, announcing a long-awaited plan to link up its southern Pearl River Delta into a massive hub of technology, research, finance, and innovation. The possibilities and challenges of the project are both equally challenging and promising, according to analysts. Some describe the plan as an attempt to create a megacity to rival Silicon Valley, the U.S. technology powerhouse that is home to companies such as Google, Facebook, and Apple. But while Silicon Valley has a population of 3.1 million, the Greater Bay Area will link up 9 cities together with Hong Kong and Macau, with a total population of about 70 million, and the economic heft, state media argues, to drive the Chinese economy, let alone the world.
Heavy rains are expected to fall in a few weeks. Aid agencies are racing to shore up flimsy shelters and stabilize shaky terrain before the monsoon season begins. The UN Refugee Agency says the work ahead is monumental, but preparations are off to a better start this year than last. Aid agencies last year had to deal with a massive influx of more than 740,000 Rohingya refugees fleeing violence and persecution in Myanmar. They arrived over a period of a few months, straining local resources and requiring vast amounts of humanitarian assistance. The World Health Organization says 12 years ago, India alone was responsible for almost 70% of all polio cases around the world. It calls India's success against polio one of the most significant achievements in public health. WHO officials say India's accomplishment proves the crippling disease can be eliminated in even the most challenging circumstances with a strong political commitment. The number of polio cases has decreased from an estimated 350,000 a year to 33 since the WHO launched its global eradication campaign in 1988.
India has downplayed the impact of U.S. plans to end New Delhi's preferential trade status that allows duty-free access to products worth $5.6 billion, saying that India has not assured the United States that it will provide equitable and reasonable access to its markets. U.S. President Donald Trump has directed the U.S. Trade Representative's office to remove India from a program that grants it preferential trade treatment. In 2017, India was the biggest beneficiary of the Generalized System of Preferences, which lowers duties on exports from about 120 developing countries. The Indian Commerce Secretary told reporters in New Delhi that India has no plans to impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. Ties waited Monday for the results of an election called a return to democratic rule, but which has been widely criticized as an exercise designed by Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to entrench his military stranglehold on power. Preliminary official results released late Sunday showed that with 93% of the ballots counted, the military-backed Phalang Parachut Party was in the lead with about 7.6 million votes. That's short of what would be needed for a majority in parliament. In second place was the Pheu Thai Party of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra with 7.1 million votes. The campaign was marred by allegations of vote buying. However, complaints were few on polling day, with election observers from Australia, Canada, the United States, and the 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations on hand. A waterproof drone is being used by Australian scientists to collect the highly treasured nasal mucus of migrating whales. The snot is rich with fresh DNA, viruses, and bacteria, and it's collected by a drone that hovers over the blow whales of humpback whales as they embark on their epic annual journey along the Australian east coast. From Sydney, Phil Mercer reports.
Whales, like all mammals, need air and come to the surface to breathe through a blowhole. Vanessa Perotta, a marine biologist at Macquarie University, says that nasal mucus indicates the health of the whale.